There have been many controversial video games throughout the history of gaming. When you think of video game controversies, you think of titles like Mortal Kombat, Night Trap, Wolfenstein, Doom, Duke Nukem, Bully, Manhunt, and so on. Many of these games were condemned by politicians, the media, religious groups, and activists due to high levels of graphic violence, drug use, explicit language, and strong sexual content. These games were often accused of promoting and encouraging violence among the youth, sparking a conversation about strict regulations in gaming. Yet time after time, they have been debunked. In 1997, there was a video game series that would define the sandbox style of gameplay, which started as a 32-bit graphics that would evolve into 3D in 2001 and HD in 2008. This game series would give players a sense of freedom that resulted in cathartic chaos and destruction, where being a lawbreaker was valued over being a hero and defender of justice. Yet at the same time, this game series would spark controversy due to its violence, crass humor, strong sexual content, strong language, and drug use. The game was also known for its satirical take on American society and inspiring other sandbox-style games that will be successful yet ultimately fail with its latest game. This is the controversial history of Grand Theft Auto. The title of the game Grand Theft Auto is a reference to the felony involving the theft of motor vehicles. This series was created by David Jones and Mike Daly, and later games would be overseen by brothers Dan and Sam Houser, Leslie Benzies, and Aaron Garbett. It was developed by DMA Design, which is now known as Rockstar North, and published by its parent company, Rockstar Games, in 1997. The game first started out from a top-down 2D video game and evolved into a pioneering 3D open-world phenomenon later on. Before Grand Theft Auto, DMA Design was developing a game called Race and Chase, which was a cops and robbers concept of gameplay with an overhead top-down 2D video game in which players played as police officers chasing criminals. Unfortunately, the developers would realize that the game was dull and the concept of being a police officer was not going to please everyone. The game would also crash constantly, the cars were handled poorly, and most significantly, it was dull and boring. But then, opportunity knocked when developers discovered a glitch in the game where the higher the wanted level was, the more aggressive the cops would get in pursuing criminals. The developers would fall in love with the chaos and destruction that resulted in, and recreated a concept where driving at high speeds, performing stunt drives, carjacking, and running over pedestrians was valued over abiding by the rules of the road. What was originally a game of cops and robbers, it became robbers and cops. And so, what was called Race and Chase became the game we all know today as Grand Theft Auto. Despite being set in America, the game was supposed to be set in London, UK first. However, the game was in 32-bit graphics with a top-down perspective, and developers feared that it would not sell so well, especially since video games evolved from sprites and into 3D with games like Tomb Raider and Super Mario 64, which grew in popularity at the time. Although the first GTA game was sprite rendered, it would become quite popular. Originally released in Europe in 1997 on MS-DOS, PlayStation, and Windows, the game would reach American shores in 1998. The development team worked to ensure that players would have the freedom to play however they intended. Before the launching of this game, it sparked controversy due to its violent content, with discussions about banning its sale. The late English publicist Max Clifford exploited the stirring of controversy as free promotion. Despite the mixed reviews, the game was a commercial success. This game is made up of 6 levels split between the 3 main cities. Each locale is based on real-life cities in the United States with an alternative name. Liberty City, a stand-in for New York City. Vice City, a stand-in for Miami. And San Andreas, a stand-in for San Francisco. San Andreas in later games will be a state rather than a city and serves as a stand-in for California. Players can choose a character from among 8, 4 in the PlayStation version, and naming them, though the choice was purely aesthetic and will not affect the overall gameplay. Players can do whatever they want, but have limited lives upon doing so. They can gain points by causing death and destruction amid the traffic in the city, complete special challenges, or stealing and selling cars for profit. Jobs can be initiated by visiting and touching a ringing telephone box. With each set of jobs on offer being unique, the jobs can be completed in any order, and each of them has some level of freedom, though each location is fixed. Successful completion of a job awards the player points, unlocks more challenging missions with greater rewards, and provides a bonus that increases the value of points earned, known as a multiplier. Jobs can fail when players are killed, arrested, or failing to complete objectives. Losing lives can result in restarting a level, and death results in loss of weapons and body armor found across the level's map to help them with missions. Law enforcement is present at each level, and committing crimes will cause the players to raise their notoriety with the police. The higher the notoriety, the more aggressive the police can respond. The story of the game is where the main protagonist begins their career in Liberty City working for Robert "Bubby" Seragliano's gang. The more jobs completed for Bubby, the more hostile and aggressive rival gangs can get, as the protagonist is hitting their businesses and killing their soldiers and lieutenants. Upon leaving Liberty City, players arrive in San Andreas, where they work for Chinese triad boss Uncle Fu. They also do jobs for El Burro, and then they get sent to Vice City. However, a corrupt police officer named Samuel Deaver is on their tail to put them in prison for a long time and blackmails them into working for him. In terms of the music, players can listen to music while driving their cars around the city. Developers came up with the idea of several radio stations that will play music from various genres. The game's music was composed by Colin Anderson, Craig Connor, and Grant Middleton. The game received mixed reviews but was a commercial success. Graphics and controls were criticized, but the entertainment value, sound design, and freedom of gameplay were praised. The first GTA game had 2 expansions that took place in a real-world setting, 1960s England. The first expansion was London 1969, followed up by London 1961. Up until this day, this is the only GTA game that takes place in a real-world setting. Much like in the first game, players can do a number of jobs to earn points and also have a sense of freedom. What also made this expansion popular is how it perfectly captured the swinging era of the 1960s and the cars and British slangs. Whenever players get arrested by the cops, the British slang for getting arrested is nicked rather than busted.
Remember, I'm the monkey and you're the cheese grater, so no messing around.
The second installment in the Grand Theft Auto series was first released on PC and PlayStation on October 22, 1999. It would later be released for the Sega Dreamcast the following year. Reviews for this game were mixed, as the graphics were seen as plain and barely had any difference, yet the soundtrack was praised. Unlike the first game, players can only play as one character instead of choosing 1 out of 8 or 4 if you're playing the PS1 version. Much like its predecessor, the game gives players a sense of freedom to do as they please, and they can also do some jobs for crime bosses where points are awarded for successfully completing missions. Points are awarded for causing destruction and performing criminal actions. While committing crimes, they can attract the attention of law enforcement. The higher the notoriety, the more aggressive the cops can get, in which they can either arrest or kill the player. Hitting the businesses of rival gangs and killing their soldiers and lieutenants can increase hostility from rival gangs and respect from the organizations that players work for. Some features or improvements over the first game include allowing players to save the game during a level playthrough by visiting a church where they start, but must pay a number of points to do so. Other improvements over the first game include vehicles and pedestrians being more interactive with the game's environment, such as gang members engaging in fights with police, the presence of other criminals, a health meter, garages that can modify vehicles with special improvements, a selection of side missions ranging from running a taxi to driving a semi-truck, and groups of hidden packages to find across the level. The setting of Grand Theft Auto 2 is unique for the series. A retro-futuristic city called Anywhere USA, which is divided into 3 districts that players will switch between as they progress throughout the game. The time period the game is set in is not specified. Conflicting sources suggest anything from 3 weeks into the future. Grand Theft Auto 2 had a short film which served as an introductory sequence for the game and was made available on Rockstar's game's website. The film follows a criminal named Claude Speed, who conducts jobs around Anywhere City for several criminal syndicates until his actions eventually catch up and he is killed by an assassin from one of the gangs he robbed. The film was based on a screenplay by Dan Houser and directed by Alex Rakoff. Despite the criticism of the gameplay and graphics, Grand Theft Auto 2 was considered an improvement over its predecessor. Then, under the guidance of the Housers, the series will go into 3D with the help of Aaron Garbett and Leslie Benzies. The success of the video game Driver would inspire developers to bring Grand Theft Auto 3 into the realm of 3D.